All right, guys. Sorry for the late delay. Only reason I'm able to do this is I actually just had someone cancel a call on me this afternoon. Um, and so we got like 35, 40 minutes. Um, Long story short, today, guys, I had my truck front right tire has just been a nightmare for me recently. Um, tire got slashed about a month and a half ago, and 2 months ago maybe, and take it in. I didn't see any slash marks. They find it, whatever. Order a new tire, get it put on, fine. Well, 3 days later, it's leaking air again. And I'm, like, what the heck's going on? I thought they fixed everything. And so take it back in. And the same tire place, they're like, we can't find anything wrong with the tire. Doesn't make any sense. They replaced the valve. They, did all this stuff. And so I'm like, I'm just going to order another tire and see if maybe there's something wrong with the tire. Who knows? So I get another tire. They put that one on. Keeps leaking. Right. And so I'm just like, started getting really busy with some stuff. And so I, had to keep putting it off. So I'm like, I got an air pump at my house and I'm filling up the tire like every 3 days. And so it's just annoying. Finally, I take it back into another place today. Had time and my wife could drop me off and pick me up and whatever. And the guys find it in like 10 minutes. They're like, oh, something on the inside of the rim was leaking. So they didn't have the part to fix it. So I had to take it to another place. Ultimately, they were able to fix it. Now I don't have to worry about my tires just leaking every night. But that was the reason why I got back. So then I get back, right? And I get back at like 12:30. I'm like getting ready for the stream. I'm going to eat some lunch and then get ready for the stream. Well, then our internet decides to just like shut off. Talking with Xfinity, it's not working. They're saying I'm going to need to bring a guy out to, look at it on Friday. And I'm thinking I'm going to be out without internet for 3 days. And then all of a sudden it starts working. And so here we are. Who knows? Looks like we're running good so far. But so we'll try to talk some shop, baseball, and everything wise. But just wanted to give you some excuses for why I was so late today with the stream. Just unfortunately couldn't get the internet to work once I got home. But we're here. We're going to talk a little bit about stuff. And again, just, another kind of, like I've been telling you guys, a little bit of a dead time period for not only recruiting, but there are a few camps, but we're getting so close to the season now. I mean, you're 3 weeks away from the season, really, 3 to 3.5 weeks. So you're just, teams are full blast focused on getting their teams ready. That doesn't mean they're not making calls and talking with players. It just means that recruiting is kind of like on the back burner a little bit, meaning, they're going to focus a few days a week on recruiting, and then the other days are just, well, what are we doing in practice today? How are we getting better? How are we getting our team prepared to, go out and play well this season? So we'll go over some articles here soon. Somehow the internet just started working, right? It's just crazy how that happens. Let me know any questions or comments you guys have. Remember, guys, I'm answering all your questions. So if you have recruiting questions, even if we're not talking about a certain topic, do not hesitate to reach out, ask a question in chat about anything, any topic, baseball, whatever you want. I'm all ears, and it helps just kind of get the conversations going. Right now, it's funny, you're seeing on Twitter a lot right now. A lot of the coaches down. I mean, think about it, guys. Yesterday, my buddy who I played with at Georgia Tech, he lives in Pensacola now. They got 11, what he told me, around 10 to 11 inches of snow yesterday. So you see a lot of these Southern coaches like, hey, coaches up north, like, when do you decide to practice inside? What temperature do you feel like it has to be to practice inside? And you know, some of those. Listen to this, guys. In the Panhandle Conference, those guys are playing tomorrow, or sorry, Friday. They're playing Friday, first game. So it's going to be. It may be the coldest it's ever been opening night in the junior college in the Panhandle Conference. And a lot of junior colleges are getting underway this week. So a lot of these Southern conferences for junior colleges, and then D2 starts up a little bit as well. Going to be some cold games being played. And I don't know, you know, our old saying in Colorado Springs, because you know you'd be, you know, opening night in Colorado Springs in AAA with Milwaukee, it would be, you know, it'd be really cold. You're up there in Colorado. And our thing was, man, if you could get out of April and you're hitting 250, you're in a good spot, man. You're grinding out walks, freezing cold, you get jammed, your hands are stinging for 4 innings. Thumbs swelling up from getting jammed. Hit one off the end. I mean, it's almost worse in BP because of, you know, you're in the game, you're so amped up with adrenaline and stuff, you really don't think about it. But in BP, when you hit one off the end or something, oof, guy throws you an accidental changeup, you're screaming. Okay, so let's get into a few articles from D1 Baseball, who is kind of my favorite place to go for college baseball content, guys. I'm just letting you know, I mean, if you're a college baseball fan and you like up-to-date stuff, breaking news, everything like that, there's not a better site than D1 Baseball. And, you know, Aaron Fitt and Kendall Rogers, I mean, they've been covering the game for so long. They were covering it way before I got into college. And they do a great job, have a great team, and cover a lot of the really best. Oh, okay, we got a bunch of questions, guys. Sorry, I did not have the chat up. Hello, what's your take on reclassifying 8th grade, high school, etc.? My thing, Slimone, I love that name. Slimone, welcome to the chat. I think it's your first time chatting. My thing is this with reclassifying. If you're really young for your grade and you're going to reclass to, like, you know, if you're in 8th grade and you're just going to reclass back into 8th grade the next year or whatever, you're like a 28 and you're going to reclass to a 29, or, you know, same 27 to a 28. If you're really young for your grade, I get it. I think it may be a good idea. Again, listen, like, I'm never going to advise anyone to do it because I get it. Like, a kid in high school who's got a lot of friends and all of a sudden you reclass, it kind of, I mean, that sucks, right? I mean, I moved around a decent amount when I was in school, just because my dad worked in professional baseball. So I moved from Florida up to Baltimore when he worked with the Orioles, and then down to Atlanta. And so that part of it sucked because you had to make new friends and everything. But the only time I really understand doing it, Slimone, is if the kid's really young for his grade and just the physicality standpoint, you're going to be behind. But again, in 8th grade, you start working out, you're fine. So if you're in 8th grade, if kids in 8th grade, even early high school, like, just start hitting the weight room hard. That's my advice. Hope that helps. I don't really like doing it that much. Jim Ski, welcome to the chat, man. In Chicago, we play as long as there's not snow on the ground. Yeah, it's a little bit different in the northern states, right? In Chicago, yeah, I mean, you just have you have nowhere else to go. You have to practice inside or you just start doing it outside. But yeah, it's a little bit different up in the north. As much as you can get on the field, the better. Zach, going to be like in the 30s Friday night for Baton Rouge Community College versus Gulf Coast. Yeah, it's going to be crazy, Zach. And just imagine, I mean, there's still going to be like snow on the ground. Maybe that would be hilarious. You know, you still got snow on the ground around the field in the Panhandle. That would be hilarious. Dusty, I think it's pronounced Slim One. Maybe, I don't know. I'm going with Slimone. I like Slimone. I think that's cooler. Okay. So Florida State schedule analysis. Our boy Bradley Smart, new addition to D1 baseball, really pumping out these. Toughest non-conference weekend. Second weekend of the year against Penn is one that should be quite competitive if the last few years of Quakers baseball are any indication. Penn has been back-to-back regionals and is always very competitive with Power 4 teams, even early in the season. Okay. Midweek game analysis. The highlight, as always, is a home neutral away series with Florida played out over the midweek schedule. Outside of that, the bulk of games are against the large league 500, sub 500 competition within the state that the Seminoles should have plenty of success against, but don't sleep on Stetson, the likely A-Sun favorite. I mean, they play against Mercer, who's always got a really good team. That's going to be that's not a slouch midweek. And again, this is going off of last year's team, so you just never know how good some of these teams will be until the season starts. So it could look like not that tough midweek games, but then you end of the season, you're like, man, they had a tough midweek schedule. ACC breakdown. The schedule lines up as nicely as it could have in terms of home and away series for the Noles. They get 4 preseason ranked opponents on their schedule at home and don't play a 2024 regional team away from Dick Howser Stadium. That's big. Remember, guys, it's always an advantage as in college baseball and really in any level of baseball to play your toughest series at home. You're going to have a home crowd. FSU is going to have a big, packed house. They're going to be doing all their chants, K time, stuff like that. There's something about you're just as a player, from a player's perspective, you're used to playing on your home turf. You see the ball better. You're used to tracking it. Sometimes you go to a road game and you just don't track the ball as well because the batter's eye is different or something like that. You know how to play your field defensively as an outfielder or an infielder. You know how the ball bounces better. So you play better defensively. You play better offensively. You're more comfortable on that mound as a pitcher. Sometimes you play, you go from a dirt mound at home and then you go pitch on a turf mound, and it's just a different feel. So all those factors go into it. Just looked it up from Zach. They canceled the series. Yeah, I mean that's probably going to be happening all over the Gulf Coast for the Panhandle Conference and some of the other junior colleges that are in the South. You're going to see that happening. Especially if temperatures are super low and there's still snow on the ground and everything. Wally, what's up, man? Welcome back. Curious if you were hearing what these Power 4 D1 schools that brought in sizable 2025 signed classes plan on doing to get to fall invite of 34 or 38. They were banking on unlimited fall roster. Well, as of now, the 38 man isn't officially set. Now it's probably going to be set, Wally. And it's a good question. I think the reality is, once that gets set, you could see some. The thing is this: in the 2025 class, a lot of those D1 schools already did their mass cuts for in preparation. Even before the 38 man was proposed, they already did a bunch of mass cuts to make it easier to get that number down to 34 at the end of the fall next year. So I don't think you're going to see you may still see some cuts going in this spring, but I think the vast majority of schools in preparation for the 34 man roster that had to be set at the end of the fall, December 1st, they've already done a lot of that. Now there's going to be some teams that, they're going to bring in 38 if they can. Pretty much every team will. So the question is, and this is the other thing, Wally, I think they've cut as many high school players as they think they need to. And then depending on how many they lose in the portal, they may have to have a smaller portal class or something like that. Because here's the deal. Even if a school was, banking on it being unlimited in the fall until you cut down to 34, you still weren't going to really, it didn't really make sense to bring in a bunch of guys. It just doesn't. Now, again, I mean, that they may be communicating with their commits and saying, listen, this many guys are coming in for the fall. And if you have a lot of high school guys coming in, you may have to bring in less portal guys this summer. Just depends on how many they lose in the portal, stuff like that. I think FSU and Florida would play a weekend series. That way you could see each team's best pitchers. Yeah, I mean, when I was playing it for the longest time, the Georgia Tech series was always 3 midweek games: one at Georgia, one at Tech, and then one at we played at Turner Field. And they've been playing recently at Gwinnett now in their weekend series. I would love to see that come back to the big league field. It's just what the problem is. Now that is a weekend series, it's like always the third or fourth weekend of the season, and so it's right before the major league season starts or right at the beginning of it. So a lot of basically the issue at Georgia Tech now to play at the new stadium is that they don't want the new field. They want the new field looking like pristine and ready to go for opening day. So they don't want a game played on it. Again, I think it's a little bit dumb. I would like to see it move back to the major league stadium, but yeah. The thing with FSU and University of Florida is you have FSU, you have Miami, and you have Florida. Well, FSU and Miami play a weekend series already in the ACC typically. Sometimes they won't play each other because of the new scheduling model. But I would like to see Florida and Miami move to a weekend. It's just something the teams have to agree on. ASU is a problem. 16 plus commits with a 48-man fall. Yeah, I mean they're just something's gonna have to happen with the portal. Sorry, I know you have a 2025 client that signed there. Yeah, and this guy was originally committed. The guy you're talking about was originally committed to A&M before the coaching change. So he's a big time arm. He's going to be fine at ASU. UGA and GT isn't a weekend series anymore. Do a little homework one time. Yeah, I know that, Dusty. I was talking about in the past. I think that's the best model. Like Dusty says, Georgia Tech is, they've moved away from that now. I don't really like it because, again, for like in-state bragging rights and just for overall getting fans to a game, that weekend series is just fun to watch as a fan because you're getting to see the two big in-state schools battle it out with their best arms. And that was kind of always the thing when I was playing. You'd kind of, the guys you knew on Georgia or the guys they knew on our team, you're kind of talking trash, but then you'd say, well, it's a midweek game. You're not facing our best arms. And so I do like the weekend series better. Hopefully it moves back to that with Georgia Tech, but it's just a scheduling thing. And again, if they get to play the midweek games against, or at the major league field, one of them, I think that's a win because it's always it's a charity game where, you get to see, and they are playing at Truist now. Okay. So they are playing at Truist. So they have, this is the thing that's weird is like, I don't know why in the weekend series they didn't do that in the past. And I think it was partly because, the big league's opening day is coming right up. But I just don't like the fact that you don't play there for 3. And now this year it's only one game at Truist instead of 3 separate midweek games. So it'll be exciting to see them on the big league field, but it's only for one game. So it's just kind of, I don't like that personally. I would rather see a weekend series, but who knows? And again, it's a good for RPI as a team. If you're facing a really good, as Georgia's projected this year, a top 10 team in the country, you're getting to face a team that you win that series. That's big for your RPI, strength of schedule and everything like that, but not going to happen this year. Just one game at Truist. So I think the rivalry series are just good for the sport in general, because that's what people want to see. That more people are going to tune into it on TV. People are going to show up at the fields, etc. But anyway, back to this Florida State schedule. Toughest stretch for Florida State, gets to play its toughest AC games at home, but still faces preseason number 2 Virginia, Louisville, and number 15 Clemson in a 3-week stretch. The big picture. Florida State went 32-4 at home in 2024 and gets to play the bulk of its hardest conference games in Tallahassee. Pair that with an easier non-conference schedule, one that has 20 of 24 games at home, and the Seminoles will feel good about the months ahead. That's not to say it'll be easy. They do rank 7th toughest. They do rank 7th toughest in the conference by quad score at 90. So they have a pretty tough schedule, middle of the pack schedule for the conference. Kind of on the front end of that middle of the pack, but still a lot of their toughest series are at home, so that's good for them. And we'll look at this Big 12 season preview by Mike Rooney. Big 12 looking a little bit different this year. Projected regional teams from the Big 12: Oklahoma State, Arizona, TCU, West Virginia, Kansas, Texas Tech, and Arizona State. So for their in-depth reports, only 3 teams in the Big 12 are preseason top 25, and that's what you've seen, guys, over the last 5 or 6 years, is that the ACC and the SEC have really pulled apart or pulled away from the other Power 4 conferences. So ACC and SEC, way more teams in the preseason top 25, way more teams in the preseason, top 40 from perfect game, and even the extra, the kind of the 10 teams that were close to the top 25 from D1 baseball. So you just have, they're just 2 of the deeper conferences, or the most deep conferences in the game. And then Big 12 is definitely that 3rd conference, but still it's a little bit of a fall off before you get to the Big 12. And like we talked about last year, the team, the Sun Belt was just behind the Big 10 in RPI. So if you're looking at like the best conferences in college baseball, the Sun Belt is a top 5 conference, even though it's a mid-major conference. That just shows you how competitive and how good those Southeast mid-majors are. Okay, so Virginia breakout players to watch. Let's take a look at 5 breakout candidates at number 2 Virginia, a team coming off back-to-back trips to Omaha and 3 in the last 4 years. Pretty solid, right? 3 trips to Omaha in the last 4 years. Virginia's just rolling. Chris Arroyo, left-handed pitcher, first baseman. From Pasco Hernando, a transfer guy. As a pitcher, he had a 3.5 ERA in 12 appearances, 11 starts, 63 innings pitched, 62 strikeouts, and 21 walks, or strikes. Really good offensive numbers as well. 403, 508, 824, 19 home runs. He was an NJCAA D2 first team All-American at Pasco Hernando. So a D2 junior college player, hitting 403 with 19 home runs. He played in Puerto Rico's summer baseball league for the Mulos de Juncos and piled up home runs. He hit 327 games in the Northwoods League, totaling 13 extra base hits while drawing 20 walks and 22 strikeouts. To cap it off, Arroyo arrived in Charlottesville for fall ball and was everything expected and more. He projects to start at first base and be in the Cavaliers' weekend rotation. Do you have any relationship with the UWV staff? Wondering what your thoughts on Sabins is going to be. Big shoes to fill after last year's run. West Virginia. Talk with those guys some. I would say it's not like one of my best relationships, Dusty. I do know West Virginia, what maybe a lot of people don't realize is they have a lot of actually NIL money and scholarship money. So West Virginia is actually really competitive in the NIL market. Essentially, on August 1st, this past fall, they offered a lot of kids and basically said the first, I think it was 10 guys to commit, we're going to get essentially full rides with like 25,000+ in NIL money as well. So West Virginia, what a lot of people don't what maybe wouldn't expect is they're Actually a big player in NIL. All right, so Aiden Teal, outfielder. 2024 stats, only 11 plate appearances, right? Didn't really play much, so we're not going to look too much into the stats. The younger brother of 2023, number 14th overall pick, Kyle. Teal has a good chance to find himself in the heart of the Cavaliers' order after an up-and-down first 2 seasons in Charlottesville. Teal missed his freshman season while recovering from Tommy John surgery he had as a senior in high school, then primarily pitched as a sophomore. He had a 7.8 ERA across 20 appearances while earning just 10 at-bats due to a crowded lineup situation. Now he expects to factor in significantly in the outfield and has the tools to do so. He slashed 387, 455, 671 in the Northwoods League this summer, which is an offensive run environment, but clubbed 11 home runs regardless and swiped 18 bases. His fantastic summer and strong fall has generated plenty of excitement. Teal has power, can run, and has shown plus defense out in center field, a boon to the club after losing Casey Salke, Bobby Whalen, and Anthony Stefan. If he's in the lineup regularly, the Cavaliers staff see him as having 15 to 20 home run potential. Wow. Bryson Moore, right-handed pitcher, only 7 appearances last year. Teammate of Teal in the Northwoods League this summer, Moore is in competition to be part of the rotation and will throw valuable innings wherever he ends up. He threw 13 innings as a true freshman, walking 8 and striking out 10. Not great numbers. To go with a 1.38 ERA. So that's those numbers indicate like over more appearances, he's going to have worse numbers ERA wise than what he had. I mean, if you're walking 8 guys in 13 innings, and now again, he was just a freshman, so he's going to improve, but you know, that's a lot of walks for the innings pitched and not a lot of strikeouts. So if it's a 4-pitch mix out of a high 3/4 delivery from Moore, his fastball sits 90-92 and is paired with a slider at 80-83. A curveball and a mid-80s changeup. It's a good breaking ball, good changeup, and he's a good athlete. I think he's really going to emerge this year as somebody we can really count on, Brian O'Connor noted. Kevin Gill, right-handed pitcher, 13 appearances, 4 starts last year, 10.38 ERA. It's been a tale of 2 seasons at Virginia for Jacksel as a freshman. He was one of the most used relievers as he logged 23 appearances and posted 3.75 ERA. It was a remarkable debut campaign. It seemed to set the stage for a big sophomore year. Instead, Jacksel struggled across 13 outings. He wasn't 100% and it proved to be a difficult season for him, but things are more than looking up. The 6'5" righty found success in the Northwoods League like many of the players on this list as he threw 33-plus innings and logged a 2.9 ERA. He had 40 strikeouts against 16 walks, a noticeable improvement in control, and one that carried over into the fall. The Cavaliers staff saw a return to his prior form and are optimistic that he can surpass that level in 25. So, guys, one of the things you have to preface these Northwoods League stats when you look at any summer ball league stats. When you see really good offensive numbers, that's a really good sign that guy's made an adjustment. He's going to come in and probably do a good job because they're playing with a wood bat. So those numbers essentially should be lower than what you expect them to do in the college season because it's with a wood bat. Now, the opposite is true of pitchers. It doesn't mean if someone, think about it like this. Pitchers are way more likely to really attack the strike zone against a wood bat because you're just not worried as much in the back of your head of getting burned by leaving a pitch over the middle with a wood bat. Way less forgiving, especially now with how good the bats are. So it's a great sign that his numbers are really good in the Northwoods League, but you have to take that with a grain of salt from looking at the pitching numbers because, again, guys have wood bats in their hand. Pitchers are just way more likely to attack with fastballs than in the season. Guys are throwing way more breaking balls than they ever have because you're trying to steal strikes and get ahead of guys because you fall behind now in this offensive era. You're getting clipped. Are you going to be calling games on ACC Network this year? My plan is to still call some, Zach. The issue is I'm also helping a former teammate at Georgia Tech coach a high school in Atlanta this spring. So midweek games, definitely not going to be able to do it. Maybe calling some weekend games, but it definitely will be a lower number than I usually did. I mean, I usually did somewhere between Georgia Tech and Auburn, something like 20 games. It'll be lower than that this year. So we'll see. I love doing it. It's just my schedule's a little bit more jammed up now that I'm helping a friend of mine coach at Wesleyan in Atlanta. Antonio Perota, first base, 455 and 13 plate appearances again. Not going to look at that. He projects as a backup to Chris Arroyo at first base. He has a good chance to get starts and at bats there when Arroyo is on the mound. The sophomore like Teal found it difficult to get on the field last year with Henry Ford at first. Perota had just 13 plate appearances as a freshman, but with Ford moving to right field, he has a chance to make more meaningful contributions. So lineup getting moved around. I mean, Virginia's lineup's going to be really good from the guys that got coming back, and Ford moving to right so that Arroyo can play first. It's going to be interesting to see that offense. And I mean, Virginia always pitches. They always have really good arms. But the offense seems like it's going to be the offense may even be a bigger strength than the pitching staff. All right, let's see if we can pull some other stuff up here. I mean, everything just from everything I've read right now. I mean, the ACC and the SEC depth wise are just every year it's getting worse and worse. They're just every team in the league has got a shot, right? Except for maybe one or two. Everyone else is just, man, there's no weekends off anymore. There's just none. So here's an interesting stat, guys, and just goes to show you how deep the ACC and the SEC as conferences are as far as overall talent. Let's look at this tweet here and why it's so hard. Again, this ties into recruiting. So most D1 baseball preseason All-Americans by conference: ACC 17, SEC 17, Big 12 4, Big 10 3, Big West 3. So what does that tell you? I mean, all the talent in college baseball, at least the premier talent, and again, these are preseason All-Americans. Some of these guys are going to end up, having down years or whatever. But when the vast majority of preseason All-Americans are from the ACC and the SEC, so 34 out of 48, 34 of 44 are from the ACC and the SEC. That's crazy. The Pac-12's not listed on here. The Big West has more potential preseason All-Americans than the Pac-12. And you're just seeing now and every year, like I'm talking about, the ACC and the SEC keep pulling apart from these other conferences and just how talented they are team by team. That's why you're seeing these SEC teams last year getting into the tournament at 13 and 17. And, ACC is probably it's a little bit less forgiving in the ACC, but if you're at 14 and 16 in the ACC, you got a shot at getting in the tournament. You don't have to have a winning season in these conferences to make it in. Now, again, maybe Florida's inclusion in the tournament last year was very controversial. LSU kind of took care of business at least enough in the SEC tournament, people felt like, to get that bid. But Florida, knocked out quickly. No one thought was going to make the tournament, and they made it. But that's the new issue with the NCAA tournament is these conferences are so deep and so competitive. You're running the gauntlet for the entire season. How do you reward the teams in that conference for playing every weekend a really tough team? Whereas in your mid-major conferences, you're going to have 3 or 4 really good teams, and then there's going to be a drop-off, to those mid-tier teams, and there's going to be an even bigger drop-off to the bottom-tier teams. Whereas in the SEC and the ACC, you may have one team, maybe 2, who aren't very competitive, but they still have a lot of talent on the team. So, it's like last year for Georgia Tech, Boston College came in and swept them at home. And that ended up being the one weekend series that basically, if Georgia Tech had 1, 2 of 3, they're in hosting conversation. If they sweep Boston College, they probably are a host. And because they got swept, they're sweating on decision day about, what if they're going to make it in or not. They finished at 15-15 in conference. So if they sweep that, they're 18-12. They're definitely hosting, right? If they win 2 out of 3, they're 17-13. They're probably hosting. And if they go one out of 3, they're definitely in the tournament. But they get to their 15-15 in conference. They weren't even last 5 in. So in these conferences, as long as if you finish at 500, you're pretty much safely in. As long as the RPI and strength of schedule is good enough. And if you're in these conferences, pretty much that's going to be the case. But this tweet right here, to me, is kind of hard to deny. You got the top tier talent is all in the ACC, SEC. It's not even close. It's not like the Big 12 had 10 or 8. I mean, they got 4. The SEC and the ACC have 4 times as many apiece. And so you're probably going to see again this year. You're going to have to see some teams from the ACC or the SEC that get in that you didn't expect, or maybe you don't think deserves it. But that's the benefit you get when you play in the 2 best conferences in college baseball by far, right? It's not even like, oh, the SEC and the ACC are a little bit better than these other conferences. That was the case maybe 5 or 6 years ago. You could say the SEC was the best and the ACC was second, but the Big 12 was really close behind. Well, the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. So now the SEC is even stronger. The ACC picked up Stanford and Cal, who, Cal's been okay. Stanford's been really good. Last year they weren't very good, but, for the last decade, Stanford's been a top 10 team. Down year last year. So the ACC is better now. And the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are having to add teams again. So the ACC and the SEC keep getting better and better teams. Now, I will say, I do think one thing you're going to see happen is because of the ACC's scheduling, and the same thing with the SEC, there's so many teams now that if you get a very favorable draw in your conference schedule and you go 15-15 or 14-16, etc., the committee may look at that as like, yeah, you played in the ACC, but you had a really, for the ACC and for the SEC, you had a pretty favorable schedule. That's probably going to hurt you now, because these conferences have so many teams in them now that you're only playing, like in the ACC we looked at yesterday, you're only playing 10 of the 15 teams. And we as we read yesterday, you have some teams that are like, they're not playing 4 of the top 5 teams in the conference preseason, which doesn't mean a whole lot, because again, these preseason rankings are always, somewhat accurate, but there's always going to be 5 to 8 teams that weren't in the preseason top 25 that end up making it in, and maybe even in the top 10. Going to be a shorter stream today, guys. We've got a few more minutes before we go, just because all the stuff I had to get taken care of this morning, and then the internet going out for like 3 hours. That was not how I drew it up. So let's look at this Notre Dame preseason snapshot, and then we'll be done for the day, and obviously we'll be back tomorrow at our normal time. Entering last season, Notre Dame was in a period of transition. The mainstays from the team that went to the College World Series under Link Jarrett had graduated or moved on, and second-year head coach Sean Stifler pieced together a roster, bringing in 15 freshmen and a remarkable 11 grad transfers to fill it out. The Irish logged a winning record, but managed just 9 conference wins and missed the ACC tournament. Now Stifler welcomes in his first full recruiting class, and while the Irish will be younger than most in the conference, the program feels it is headed in the right direction ahead of 2025. That was the exciting part of the fall, Stifler said of the incoming freshman class. The flip side of that is when you have that many new freshmen that you're committed to, you're going to be young. We're going to be young on the field in spots and young in roles. And I think that's tough to sit here and say in college athletics now, because nobody's young with the portal and the way that works, and the way that works, we're going to be one of those teams. But at the same time, we're very, very excited about it because it's our vision and it's our guys, and it's guys that we're excited to develop. Right, and that's always the issue when you're a brand new head coach because, like I've tried to tell you guys, recruiting is so subjective. Um, as a coach, you're going to see guys that you think are really good, in a coach in the exact same conference that's an hour and a half away may look at that player and think, I don't know if he's going to be that good. So when you're a brand new coach and you're coming in, you've got a bunch of players coming in that you didn't recruit. You don't know much about typically, and you're trying to figure out about them. And then again, when you haven't watched the player, you're having to basically look at these players for the first time in the fall. And when you've evaluated a player for a year and a half, 2 years or whatever, and he's committed, and you know the things about him that you think need to improve, you know the things he definitely needs to get better at. And so when you come in as a new coach, you really don't know any of that about your incoming guys. So the real test is usually a couple years in, when your recruiting classes start to come in. One, is the guy a good evaluator? Is he bringing in the right players? That's number one. Because if you're not a good recruiter, you're typically not going to win because you're not bringing in the right players. And then secondly, how good can he develop guys? So a really good coach can come in and develop players right away, no matter if he recruited them or not. But certainly that has to happen once you're on campus for a few years and you start getting in your players. The incoming class lost 2 players to the MLB draft, but still features 2 projected starters in the lineup, 2 more in the mix, and a trio of arms that should play key roles on the staff. That's an impactful first-year group. It's worth noting that while the Irish may be younger at the plate, they do return quite a bit on the mound, over half the innings pitched and 2/3 the starts a season ago. The pitching is certainly more experienced in the lineup and figures to be leaned on out of the gate. Returning experience is something that we haven't had yet here in this program, and that's the good part about where we're at right now. Every year moving forward, we're going to return more and more, Stifler said. The pitching seems to be a year ahead of where the positional players kind of are when it comes to that returning experience, so we're excited about that. The path to success in the ACC for Notre Dame is development, as it's not a program that will make big waves in the transfer portal, at least not yet. The Irish pulled in some interesting graduate transfers from this offseason, but the bulk of the roster is and will continue to be multi-year players that have developed. There may be some growing pains this season offensively, but the experience on the mound and a strong defensive identity gives them a good chance to be competitive and take the first step towards building a roster that can consistently win in the ACC. So the Fighting Irish Essentials. Team MVP will be Estevan Moreno, making the move to shortstop where he played in high school. Moreno is an impact bat and strong defender who likely will hit 3rd in the order. As one of 4 players with at least 150 plate appearances last season, Moreno's experience will be counted on, particularly in conference play. He hit 13 home runs last year and swiped 7 bases as a sophomore and has played every day since the day he stepped on campus. There's a potential to unlock more power even after posting a .988 OPS in 2024. Team Cy Young will be Rory Fox. Originally recruited as an infielder, Fox has transitioned to pitching full-time and has the stuff to be a front-end arm in the rotation. He missed the bulk of his freshman season due to injury, but turned in 50 innings as a sophomore and only continues to grow. Whether he's pitching on Fridays or Saturdays behind Jack Raydell, Fox has taken big steps as he's gotten more reps in and really learned how to pitch. Perhaps most intriguing is the arsenal he has. He's a true 4-pitch mix arm with a riding fastball in the mid-90s and a hard 12-6 curveball, a cutter at 84-86, and a changeup. See, every team's got like a Friday night starter that's mid-90s. It's probably going to change when the season starts, right? We'll have a bigger year than expected. Carson Tinney. The sophomore backstop had his first season cut short by a torn ACL, but is expected to be fully ready for opening day. He was primarily splitting time with Joey Spence last season before he went down in late April. And while that positional battle will remain, Tinney seems to have the edge. As a freshman, Tinney hit .286, .397, .500 across 69 plate appearances. He started a few games in the 5-hole, but largely factored in the bottom third of the lineup. He'll be much higher in the order in 2025 and could, if he's able to return to form and take expected strides forward in his second year, be among the better offensive catchers in the conference. Key newcomer in a lineup that largely lacks a lot of proven D1 hitters, Zimbardo and his 160 career games at Quinnipiac stands out. A career .303 hitter over almost 750 plate appearances, Zimbardo is a veteran bat that figures to be in the top third of the lineup. He's capable of playing any of the outfield positions and is able to disrupt the game in many ways, whether it's crashing into the wall to make a catch, beating out an infield single, or stealing a base. 49 for 59 at Quinnipiac. Telling you guys like that, those portal guys that have 750, 500 plate appearances under their belt, it's like, yep, he's got a track record. So this is their around the diamond, basically projected starters. This isn't the projected starting lineup because, again, they're just going by position. But let's look at the offensive numbers, and we'll see here. Obviously, going to have some freshmen in the lineup, so you don't know what they're going to do. Um, batting average wise, kind of looking okay, right? Nothing special offensively, and that's again a lot of newcomers. Power is going to be okay, but nothing crazy. Um, really not a lot of at bats between most of these guys to really have an idea. 69 plate appearances, 33, 70, 100, even 150. 150 guys, think about it. If you're making it to a regional, you're probably getting anywhere from 215 to 250 at bats. So like one rough stretch from 159 to 200 at plate appearances, like you're hitting 230. So we just, there's not enough information on most of these guys besides Zimbardo, who raked last year and had 40 walks. So this guy's going to be, 26 stolen bases. This guy's going to be their table setter. And again, it's really good to have a guy like this at the top of your lineup, because if he's hot, he's getting on base. It's just hitting is contagious. The guys behind him are going to be better. Projected weekend rotation, again, just a lot of question marks, really. Not a lot of strikeout stuff. 38 Ks and 50, 39 Ks and 53. They're not walking a lot of guys. That's good. But I think the question is going to be, are they going to miss enough bats in this era? It sounds kind of cliche, but in this era, if you can strike out guys and not walk guys, you're going to have a lot of success. And you may say, oh yeah, no duh, Kyle. But the difference is, when I was playing, you didn't really need to strike out guys because the bats were so bad, the balls were so bad. If you could pitch to contact, like semi-weak contact, you were going to be really successful because you weren't going to get burned. You had to really hit a bolt to burn an outfielder or hit it out of the park. Now, you can miss swing, not know where it is, which I saw happen the last 2 years so many times, and it's a home run or it's off the wall. So now those guys that pitch to contact, unless it's like, man, they can really change speeds and like get guys off the end, they're going to get burned a lot more in this era than they would have a decade ago when I was playing. So really the key is you got to have strike throwers and you got to have guys with swing and miss stuff. If you have that, you're going to be really good. Doesn't mean you can't be good with guys that don't have swing and miss stuff. It's just much harder. The room for error is a lot smaller. Okay, and this is kind of summary. So things could go right if the veteran pitching staff clicks and helps carry the Irish alongside their typical brand of strong defense. They're able to get enough out of a younger lineup, and the older pieces gel to make things interesting in conference play. Things could go wrong if the pitching staff can't be relied on to the extent expected, and the lineup struggles offensively, leading to another difficult year in conference play. It's hard to be young in college baseball, particularly in a conference as deep as the ACC, but the experience would likely still serve them while going into what could be a big 2026. So let's look at this, right? How young are they? Because this is again, young is a relative term in today's era. So in their projected starting rotation, a couple sophomores, a grad transfer, and a junior. So is that young now? A senior expected to close. And in the lineup, you have a freshman, another freshman expected, then you have a grad transfer senior, grad transfer junior, senior, sophomore, grad transfer. So like, what does young mean now? Because my freshman year at Georgia Tech, in our starting lineup, we had 4 freshmen pretty much every game on offense in the starting lineup. So that would be like, that wouldn't be young. It would be like, wow, this is the youngest team in college baseball. Now you have 2 freshmen in your lineup, you're considered young, right? Because it's not like it's a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. There's 1 sophomore, and then they're all mostly grad transfers and seniors. And then the starting rotation has no freshmen. Sure, certainly the bullpen's going to be probably young. They might have some freshmen. You always throw freshmen in the bullpen. That's kind of how it always is. Freshmen always kind of got to earn their stripes in the bullpen, unless you're really, you have a really elite freshman, or you don't have a lot of starting arms. And so again, it's like this is how crazy college baseball has gotten with the portal and everything. It's like this team is considered really young when they have 2 freshmen in the lineup and 1 sophomore. have no projected freshmen on the weekend rotation or in the mid as a midweek starter. So it's just that's guys. If you're out there as a kid or a parent and you're thinking, oh, I got a really good shot of, when you're making a decision about choosing a school, just think about that. This is considered a really young team in college baseball. It's considered young by D1 baseball. It's considered young by their coaching staff. I remember talking to Danny Hall, Georgia Tech's head coach last season, about my freshman year and how we had, 4 freshmen in the starting lineup at all times, and we had some really good freshman arms in the bullpen. We did have a pretty veteran starting rotation, but we had a lot of really good freshmen in the bullpen, and that was just kind of the norm. It was like the norm to have 3 freshmen in the starting lineup and freshmen pitching out of the bullpen, and even some midweek starter freshmen. Your midweek starter was almost always like a freshman who you thought could be the future Friday guy. That was kind of typically what you would do. And now it's like you're throwing a senior or a junior in the midweek, just because the whole strategy is different now. You're not worrying about developing a guy for 2 years from now. It's like we have to win every single game. We can't just like hope a freshman develops and learns unless we really feel like he can command and start as a freshman. So again, if you're out there and you're getting recruited right now and thinking about making a decision, like just remember, guys, this is considered a young team, and they have 2 freshmen projected to start. And what you could see happen is one of these freshmen falls on their face early, and then another guy's plugged in, and they got like 1 freshman in the starting lineup at the end of the year. It's a whole new world now in college baseball when a team like this is considered young. But that's going to be it for today, guys. I didn't have much time to do it. I just wanted to make sure we got to talk for a little bit today. Remember, if you're looking for help recruiting process, scan that QR code. We'll be back tomorrow normal time, as long as my internet's not, freaking out like it did earlier today.